an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 4, Episode 16. I have a date tonight. In this episode, Rebecca goes and dates 3 dudes, one right after the other, 3 days in a row. And surprising nobody, it is so high pressure that in the end, she kind of wants to do a take-backsies. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. I just want to remind you all that on Friday the 30th, this coming Friday, I guess by the time this is up, probably it'll be too late, but I will be doing a live watch of the finale, I'm in Love, and then I will be recording on the 3rd of August, which is the following Tuesday, on that episode. So I just wanted to let you all know. So this episode, yeah, you guys know, like, the way the last episode ended, I was very intrigued by the entertainment value of the idea of the 3 dates, but it just doesn't seem like a good way to actually determine who you want to be with. You know, like, what you can tell on a date with somebody is very little. It's a preliminary for getting to know someone. But as for establishing how much chemistry you have long term, it can be really deceiving. And we already know the baggage that she has with these guys. And so I was kind of like, I don't see how this will work. In the end, what winds up happening seems to be that she and Greg have a whole different sort of energy that is more sustainable. I am not certain, however, that means she's going to end up with Greg. Y'all know how mixed my feelings are regarding Greg. It's tough. I'm going to go through each of these 3 dates. But first, I'm going to talk about the betting pool. So we get a pretty fun sort of spoof of Luck Be a Lady Tonight. Guys and Dolls, for those of you who have not seen or heard the production. And it's led by Josh, who I just feel should get so much more to do. I would love to watch like a Josh spin-off show, honestly. He is just so delightful. And it turns out that everybody is prepared to get invested in who she winds up choosing because they are all so certain that they understand the psychology behind each of these people. And while they are, in a way, a bit ashamed of what they're doing, it's not, like, ashamed enough to not do it. So, the thing is, we've got the initial sort of lead up to the betting. First, Paula, who is Team Josh. She says that the history that he has with Rebecca is too significant. The arc winding up with him makes total sense. And honestly, character-wise, it makes a lot of sense that Paula would be rooting for Josh. Paula is a romantic comedy fan. She is a Twilight fan. She wants the woman to end up with the original guy. That's like, of course she does. You know, that makes total sense. Then we have Heather, who is Team Nathaniel. I was a little bit surprised by this, to be honest. I would have put Valencia as Team Nathaniel and Heather as Team Greg. And instead, Heather just is like, you know, she says something about how Nathaniel comes in and like tips all of his servers like $100. that he has just done a variety of things that, in her opinion, really point to the fact that he is genuinely becoming a better person. And I guess I'm trying to think how this scene would have changed if it were Valencia that was sort of backing Nathaniel. I feel like Valencia is the same sort of susceptible to superficial shit that Nathaniel is. So that's why I would expect her to back Nathaniel as the one with money, the one who's the most, like, I want to say classically attractive, but I don't really even think that. But, you know, according to the show, yes. And who has, like, the high-powered, promising career and thus a stable future. I would really think Valencia would back him. But I'm wondering if the show writers knew that would be the tact she would take, and it would seem a little bit too mercenary. So they gave Nathaniel to Heather instead so that she could talk more about his, like, human qualities. And Valencia winds up backing Greg. And she just feels like Greg, she says he is practically an entirely different actor now. And by actor, I mean in, you know, the lawful sense. So I would be really interested, you guys, to hear what you all expected from this episode. Because I didn't know what I was going to get going in. Rebecca, in the first couple seasons of this show, would have been delighted by this proposition. The idea of 3 attractive, stable, and good-hearted men who are all so in love with her that they would come to an agreement to do this in the first place. That's just like fan fiction. You know, this is the kind of thing that she would fantasize about. And that is something that I probably would also have fantasized about, you know, in my early 20s. And then as you get older, it starts to lose its shine because you begin to understand this stuff doesn't happen like a movie where it's in a vacuum and then you can just pan away. Everything has consequences that continue to ripple outward after. And, you know, what happens if she doesn't choose Josh, but she's continuing to live with Josh? I mean, he has to move out then, right? You can't keep living with that guy. Thankfully, she's not still working at the law firm, or I'd be like, yeah, she definitely has to leave that job. I mean, even if she did wind up with Nathaniel, it would still not be great that she's working with him. And Greg is like the only one whom not choosing wouldn't lead to like a massive upheaval in her life in some way. Well, Nathaniel wouldn't either now that she's not working there. But the pressure of it, combined with how ultimately meaningless what they will do is gonna be, and I'll get to that in a second, it just isn't any metric, you know? So we have that bit about everybody betting. I really loved the performance of the song, but the lyrics of the song I felt like just kind of missed for me. It was one of those where I was very into the spectacle of it. I really loved when Paula tap danced, by the way. She was like really good. But overall, the song just didn't quite hit for me the way I really wanted it to. Although the whole like green uplighting and the money flying through the air, it was very, very fun to watch. I'm trying to think, is there another song this episode? I feel like that's the only other. Oh my God. Lauren just reminded me of the death pool. And they say that Josh will die at 52 in a parasailing accident, which I would love to see what the predictions were for everybody else. It might say, like, it might be legible, actually, if I go there. I have the episode, playing in the background here. Oh, and I should mention, too, that when we have the Meet Rebecca in the beginning, everybody, the camera pans back over to perfect, awesome Rebecca. And then we see that she's getting her hair fixed. Rebecca comes over to point out that perfection is an illusion, but then somebody immediately comes up to her to begin adjusting her makeup and everything. I thought that was a pretty good joke. I actually really liked that. I wonder what they're going to do for like the finale episode, if they will have her at all, or if they're going to return to an older song maybe for the last episode, or what. I'm looking through the episode, and I'm trying to find the moment where they do the death pool. Here it is. Let's see. Josh, electrocution due to faulty DJ equipment, age 59, 30-1. Nathaniel, trampled by elephants at the zoo, age 49, 18-1. What? Why? Oh, because he loves the zoo. I forgot that's a thing with him. That's a good little thing. Greg, dying of loneliness, age 65. Good God. Josh, a sink dropping on his head while he was fixing it, age 42. Nathaniel, dying of loneliness, age 65. Greg, kitchen something accident, age 49. I wonder what the kitchen accident... I'm assuming that this is in like his restaurant. Those are grim. That's pretty fun. Oh my God. Megan says the other song is the Weird Al one, which, it doesn't quite count because it's like a reprise, isn't it? Of, the Where's the Bathroom song that her mother sings in season 1 or 2. But it's super good. I did really enjoy that little bit, and I have constantly thought about that. We'll get to the whole thing with the hot air balloon in a minute, but okay, so we have this whole thing. Then we have Rebecca. She first goes to see her therapist. And when I say that, it really sounds like she has an appointment. Instead, she stalks her therapist at a coffee shop. Later, she stalks her therapist at a wine bar. And I know that the focus really should be on how inappropriate it is that she stalks this woman and how it just is a real problem with boundaries and that she really needs to examine that. But mostly, I just want Dr. Akopian's life, where she takes her refreshing morning walk and stops at a coffee shop to have a mocha, and then at the end of the day goes off to a wine bar for a glass of wine and a novel that she's reading. That sounds amazing. Can I live that life, please? I need to move somewhere where I can walk to a coffee shop, first of all, and where there is a wine bar, because there is not a wine bar within an hour and a half of me. And I certainly, any place around here is not some place that you can just chill and read a novel. But damn, I'm jealous. So, let's start with Josh's date with Rebecca. She's trying to center herself, and she keeps on having to tell Josh to wait a second because he is very insistent, although it makes a lot of sense because he's super excited. So, he has set up a whole thing in the backyard. And I think it's Hector that says to Greg that Josh has a black belt in romance. Did we know that? I'll be honest, I don't really remember having seen that before. But he is a pretty sentimental guy in some ways. However, what he has done here, this is really cute. First of all, the way he lights up as he leads her outside, that is some good acting. He genuinely looks like he's about to explode with excitement. He leads her outside, and he has created summer camp for them in the yard with a fire pit and a tent. He got some fake grass that apparently he wound up stealing from his mother's lawn. Now, here comes the thing. Our dudes all have a meeting about ground rules. And one of the ground rules, addresses my concern from the previous episode, which is that Nathaniel is just going to be able to fucking out money everybody, and that's just not really fair. So they establish a $50 limit, which $50 is genuinely like a low number to try and impress somebody a lot on a date. Even if you're doing a picnic, unless you make everything yourself from fairly cheap starting ingredients, that's like just filling the picnic basket by itself is going to cost you $50 if you're doing like a fancy picnic with nice cheeses and a bottle of wine. So when they said $50, I fully expected us to raise that, but they did not. So then another thing is you can't take off your shirt, which, as they decide, the money takes away Nathaniel's advantage, covering up takes away Josh's advantage, but they don't really know what Greg's advantage even is. And so they decide that they're not going to like create a particular rule to cut his legs out from under him. And as things go on, Greg seems very confident. There's a part of me that really likes that. It would be easy for him to play his confidence in such a way that it would be irritating and make me feel like he was taking her for granted. But they managed to really not do that, and his confidence comes off much more as like, I just have total faith that it's us. I'm just not worried about it. This is something that happens. You know what? I was about to spoil something. I'm not going to spoil something. But I have seen this before. And there's real big dick energy to it. You know? And I just really like it. And there's, like I said, a fine line between taking somebody for granted and having confidence. But genuinely, when it's played like this, it's a turn on. So this, like, spread that Josh has cooked up here is really adorable. He's got all of these like hot dogs that they're going to roast over the fire. And it's just a touching thing because like the two of them had summer camp together. And so this is a throwback to them originally meeting. And it really is a super sweet idea. You know, I actually thought this is the sort of thing that I have to talk about here. Okay. I have to talk about it. So, here's the thing with this. And anybody who's been in a long-term relationship gets this. These sorts of gestures are not pointless. I'm not trying to say that. Rowan, we will get there. Rowan is making a comment that is exactly what I was going to talk about later on, but we will definitely talk about it later. The thing about these sorts of gestures is that I think due to romantic comedy, I mean, there's a whole episode within this show about the grand gesture. They have been given too much weight. And so, a lot of men are led to believe that they can kind of be a dick or inattentive or whatever most of the time. And as long as they pull out moments like this once a year, once every few years, that's enough. And a lot of women are brought up on the same media, sort of taught to feel that these sorts of gestures are enough to prove how a man feels about you and establish the kind of work that he is willing to put in to create a night like this. And that's in itself proof, you know, that he is trying his best and that he cares. And my question always is, how many people in a relationship that is longer than 5 years, how many people can point to a partner doing something like this for them after those 5 years? That's the real test. Doing something like this when you're trying to win over a girl that you know has two other very compelling options, it's not really as meaningful Because it's not purely to make her happy. It's so that you can get something out of it. Do you get what I'm saying? Versus somebody that you are already in a relationship with, whom you love and simply want to give a great, fun, memorable night. And that is the difference between men who are courting and men who actually appreciate and value the person they're with every day and constantly are striving to earn that affection over and over again because they do not take for granted that they have them. And that's what most people wind up running into. And I won't even say that men are the only people who do this. It just tends to be men who take women for granted in a lot of ways because of society and patriarchy and the way that our labor is just not valued. And it just, you wind up in this place where you look back at, like, when's the last time I did some big thing to make them happy? And it was way in the beginning when you very first started dating. That's a red flag that either you are beginning to take this person for granted, they're beginning to take you for granted, or worse, you don't even think it's worth the energy and effort anymore. Because maybe you don't actually feel about them the way that you should feel in order to motivate you to do something like this. So, as much as what he and Nathaniel set up are very adorable and somewhat creative, especially in Josh's case, it's just not impressive to me because it isn't due to pure love. It is, their motivations are a little corrupted here. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not to say that it's not super romantic and sweet. It just feels false. And that's what winds up happening later on with Greg. So when I'm entering into this episode, y'all know I don't really like Greg. The switching actors thing really shook it up for me. And overall, I feel like Greg doesn't have the joie de vivre that somebody with Rebecca needs to have. She loves goofy little rituals. She loves things that he actively dislikes. I was about to say doesn't care about. No, that's too mild a word. He actively dislikes some of these things. I still just don't see how she can be happy with somebody who his skin crawls at the idea of going on one of the rides at Raging Waters. Do you know what I'm saying? That said, the fact that he isn't pulling out all the stops the way these other two are is in some ways really good evidence of the fact that he is the right one. So it was unexpected to see the way they decided to handle that for the episode, but I think that is compelling. And if he were to do something like this once they're together and they've been together a minute, that would be much more meaningful. I will say, though, and this is like kind of veering in the other direction, Rebecca was so upset by his attitude at Raging Waters that she actively tried to cheat on him with 2 people. I'm going to say Greg maybe deserves better at this point. And he's letting himself get walked on a little bit. I don't want to think that, and I know that Rebecca didn't mean to hurt him and that that was a spiral for her. That doesn't change the fact that she was going to do it. And if those guys had been open to it at all, she would have cheated. It was not due to her own restraint that she didn't. It was due to 2 other people saying no to her. For me, that points to the fact that she shouldn't be with anybody at all. I really don't think so. I think in the end, it should be her by herself. That's just how it feels to me. So, because I feel like it's really easy to forget that she just literally sought out two dudes to sleep with because of a fight. Like, that was not long ago, guys. Was that 4 episodes back? Like, you know? And honestly, as Nathaniel or Josh, being the person on the receiving end of drunk Rebecca throwing herself at you because she's in a fight with Greg, not even really a fight, it would make me rethink my attraction to her. I wouldn't be able to sustain that with somebody who I saw actively attempting to cheat on the person that they are with. It just wouldn't feel like a good sign to me. She has made a lot of progress as a person. I just don't think she's in a place that they want her to be in for them. So this evening with her and Josh, it's so weird because they wind up like falling asleep in this tent together. She asks if kissing is allowed, and I don't think that they have sex, right? I guess that sex is like not allowed. Kissing is allowed. But yeah, this moment he tells her to close her eyes, and he pulls out one of those like star things, and he turns the light in the tent out so that when she opens her eyes, the inside of the tent looks like the night sky. Honestly, pretty dope. That was a really good bit. I like how he says something about how he like had to try a bunch of different angles and shit to make sure that it worked out properly. But yeah, so this was a sweet bit, well thought out, well set up. I'm not trying to just shit on it, but there's a whole thread through it that for me is just suspect. So she wakes up, she seems super happy. We go to home base and everybody is dying for an update. Heather comes in and says, the next door neighbor called. I told him we were dying for info and that I would cut him in on my winnings, so he peeked over the fence for me. And he saw them waking up in each other's arms through a very tiny window in a tent. And I love the way that she describes, the way she delivers the word tent. In a tent! Like, it's the most outrageous shit she has ever heard. And Paula gets a text from Rebecca. I love how she says, I'm getting a text. And when she holds it up, it just says dots. So that means that Paula has just had her text window to Rebecca open this whole time. And she sees the moment that Rebecca starts typing, which is 100% on brand and also what I would do. So what comes through is it was perfect. And for as far as Paula is concerned, that's a win. And Josh shoots to the top, Nathaniel in second, Greg's still in third. Everybody has Greg at third. Everybody is bugging out because they all have put like their fucking savings on it. And then we go to this amazing bit with Greg. So Greg runs into Paula at home base. And she has just found out that the sign-up sheet for some, like, what the fuck is the event even? It's something for her son's school. She went to the sign-up thing and everything was already taken that was, like, at all easy. And it turns out the one thing remaining on the list is salmon, poached salmon, I think, for 60 people. Which, as we see later, nobody even eats. That was the most realistic shit, you guys. I will not pretend that I have been in this kind of position because I don't have kids. I don't do these sorts of event things. But the whole putting a bunch of work into something very specific that practically nobody touches, I have seen. And it is devastating. Devastating. So she sees that that's the only thing remaining to sign up for. The other moms are fucking glowing over the fact that they managed to get out of doing the really hard thing. I really enjoy this. One of them got stuck with kosher scones, which she has to bake under the supervision of a rabbi, which is amazing. This other woman who slept outside managed to get the plastic silverware, and that's it. And this is when Paula asks what's left. She sees that it's just the salmon left and is disgusted. And then Greg walks up to her and she kind of snaps at him and is just like, you don't understand. No, I have to go. I have to go. And he sees the sheet and understands what's happening here. But as she sprints off, freaking out, he turns to Hector and says, I was just trying to say hi. What's the deal? Hector says she just seemed preoccupied. And Greg's like, yeah, I'm sure that's probably it. It's not like she doesn't like me. And then he stops and says, but we have had our ups and downs. And we get a bunch of flashbacks. Paula saying, don't go out with Greg. Greg is a whiny little bitch. You're sleeping with Greg? Sarcastic, alcoholic, unromantic Greg? He is completely shut down and he is angry. Paula, I get it. You don't like Greg. And he suddenly realizes that as much as he has been having this pure confidence, Paula's she is in the position of power as Rebecca's best friend. If Paula doesn't like him, the odds go down for him a bit. And that's not to say that Rebecca's just going to do what Paula says. As we know, that's definitely not how it works. But it would influence her. And he starts to think maybe shit needs to be taken a little bit more seriously. So what he does is he handles all of the salmon. He brings it to Paula's work. And she had just been having, when they set up this betting pool, she'd just been having a conversation about how she hasn't got time to fucking do anything anymore at this job because she is expected to actually show up. It's a very different work environment than what she's used to. So, the idea of making 60 portions of salmon, it's just not even on the fucking menu, pun intended. So he brings this in, and she's mystified when he shows up with this, but then immediately puts it together. Oh, I get it. You overheard me having a problem, so you thought you'd swoop in and help, get in my good graces, so I'll put in a word with Rebecca. And both him and Hector are like, oh, damn. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. I should mention, too, that the fact that he has a restaurant makes this it's not it's not as good of a good deed, but I forgot that he had a restaurant and I was like, damn, he's at home just making 60 portions of salmon. That's a pain in the ass. But then when I realized, oh, he has a literal professional kitchen and probably access to salmon wholesale, it became much more manageable all of a sudden. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So then Paula finishes with, Rebecca makes her own choices, but I gotta say, you have a lot of tough competition, so I really hope that you have a better plan than bringing me fish. And he says, yes, ma'am, I do. He genuinely begins to sort of panic under her eye. So he comes up with his plan, which I'm going to talk about now. Just the plan. Rowan's comment was, there is no way you can rent a hot air balloon for less than $300. Exactly. Honestly, when he goes to rent the hot air balloon, I thought that was going to be the scene. Was that he was going to find out there was no way on God's green earth that he was going to be able to rent that for $50. Instead, it's treated like, oh no, yeah, we have a $50 package. And I was like, you definitely don't. I looked into a hot air balloon rental. I don't even remember what it was for, but it was way back before I even married Brendan. That would be 2005? And back then, it was nearly $400. I don't know how inflation works on things like that. Maybe it's still around the same price, for all I know. But there is absolutely no fucking way you could get by yourself with one other person a whole hot air balloon. You could maybe split it with people because they can carry like 8-10 people, I think, depending. But no way are you doing it for just a couple for $50. And this is the only thing sometimes this show can be so disconnected from like the very real money issues. And then they'll have an episode where Paul is freaking out about the price of a suit, and I'm like, oh no, okay, they get it. And then they'll do a thing again, and I'm like, okay. So yeah, I thought that the scene was going to be like, because it turns out the guy who owns the balloon place is Weird Al. Obligatory Weird Al cameo in the musical show. Makes total sense. Also, that man does not seem to age. He looks the fucking same in everything. I don't know. It must be just his like good humor that keeps him looking young. He's a treasure. But yeah, I really thought that the song was going to be about like, oh my God, did you really think that you could rent a hot air balloon for $50? And that he would like go itemize down through the list of the expenses for doing a hot air balloon ride, plus the insurance coverage, plus whatever, and give him some grand total of like $800 and then laugh in his face, which personally I would have been happier with. The main thing is that there's no bathroom in a hot air balloon, so please don't poop in my balloon. And that is a very real concern. Anything that you're going to be doing where you have no escape, no way to reach a bathroom, gives me a great deal of anxiety. If you are a $20 and up patron, you heard the saga of my trip to Florida this past week for wedding planning stuff, which went horribly. And I hated it, and I wasted so much money, and I will not get it back, and it was the worst. But one of the worst parts was being stuck on a plane that was delayed, and then a very short flight, and then there was no actual break between that flight and the next. So I didn't go to the bathroom for almost 6.5 hours straight. And by the end of the night, when I finally was able to pee, I thought I was going to have like kidney poisoning. Like, it was just really, really bad. So, you know, I can hold it for a couple hours. I don't know how long your average balloon flight would be. I'll probably guess like an hour, you know, maybe. It's the sort of thing that for the price, you want it to be 4 hours long. But once you're in it, an hour is plenty. But yeah, I bet that is like a concern that they have. It's also weird to me when you think of a romantic thing. A hot air balloon flight sounds romantic in its way, but think about how small the basket is, and the fact that you are definitely up there with somebody controlling the balloon and steering. So you're in this very small enclosed space with 1/3 wheel who's just listening to everything and watching everything. That doesn't feel romantic to me. I don't know if that's just me, but that is not how I want to spend my time. You know, maybe if they had some earbuds in and they had their AirPods on, like, you know, noise canceling or something, then fine. But otherwise, that's just awkward and weird. Like, I'm good. So Rowan says, I looked it up in Ohio 12 years ago, and it was $250 for a group of up to 8 people. Wow. That's less than the one that I checked out. But, you know, yeah, like, in either case, $50 ain't gonna cut it. So, and he decides to do this because he's feeling the pressure now. And he gets given, like, with the package, rainbow bow tie and this, like, weird tux and socks. Which, again, for $50? Like, I wish. You're kidding me? I wish. But that doesn't go the way he expects anyway. So then let's go to Rebecca getting ready for her date with Nathaniel. And she's leaving, and Josh comments on how beautiful she looks. And it's a really awkward moment. He says, he tries to be cool about it. You know, he says, you look so beautiful. And she says, I'm sorry in response, which, like, I get it. And he says, you and Nathaniel have a good time and an okay time, a fine time. And then, who am I kidding? I've been praying all day for the San Andreas Fault to open up and swallow up Nathaniel, and then Greg, and then Josh Chan from Azusa, who continues to mess with my credit rating. So, she heads out to her date with Nathaniel. We don't see how they get where they're going. I'm assuming that he, like, picked her up and drove her, right? I'm trying to watch this moment because I don't think... Okay, so there's, like, yeah, we see a car pull up. It seems like this is sort of a national park area because there's a big, like, what do you call it? There's a big lot and all of this stuff, but he's found a sort of secluded corner. And he has set up this picnic on a cliffside, and it turns out that there is a concert, and the positioning of this, like, little picnic can pick up the sound coming off of the concert. And he thinks that it's going to be a Michael Bublé, like, hits from Broadway show. And it turns out, as they're listening to it, he stops and is like, that's not really what I thought. I will say that the view is really something. And I'm assuming that this is, like, on location. But you can see the outline of LA. I have been in a house on a hill like this that overlooks LA. And while LA is, in my opinion, a trash heap, and I would never fucking want to live there ever, they're not meant to be by LA. They're meant to be, like, further north. But this looks like a view of LA. It is a really breathtaking view. This was a great day to have this moment. So yeah, they start to, like, hear the music begin, and they're sort of weirded out because it doesn't really sound. And she says, she thinks that he hired a band, and he's like, no, I'm playing by the rules. Greatest Hits of Broadway with Michael Bublé. And for a minute, it's just perfection, and they hear somebody talking, and then the music starts to play. And she says, that's weird. I don't know this one. And he digs out his phone to double check. And it turns out that he says, I screwed this up. It's not Broadway's Greatest Hits. It's 70s Groove Night with Marty Macaroon and the Funky Town 8, which is just so good. And this winds up being, like, a thing later on, where what is it that Daryl and is it Jim? I think it's Daryl and Jim are talking about, like, being macaroon heads or something, and I just really am into it. And she says that she's starting to get into it, and he says, I'm sorry, this is awful, I can't believe this. And she's like, hold on, I actually kind of like it. And he says, no, you don't. No one likes this. And I'm like, you are wrong, sir. I was getting into it for sure. I was personally, like, you know, it's an unfair comparison because for me, Michael Bublé singing like Broadway standards is a nightmare, like a literal anxiety dream. But this, 100% perfect background music for the situation that they are currently in. I get why he's so devastated, and when you put a lot of planning into something and a major factor isn't what you thought, it's so heartbreaking. But it, in my opinion, wound up working out quite well. And he says Marty Macaroon doesn't even like this, and she says, I'm going to like anyone with the name Macaroon. Shall we dance? So they get up and dance, and apparently the crew that is betting on this, they have their little fucking drone that is watching the whole scene. Can I tell you guys something? The two of them are standing on this cliff making out, and I could not relax because I just imagined them getting a little bit too into the making out and tipping sideways and falling right the fuck over the edge of that cliff. It just, oh God, they're just, it's romantic sitting down. I can't with, my fear of heights, like, I forget about it until I see things like this, and then I'm just like, oh my God, you guys, make out all you want, just sit down though, please, fuck. Oh, so she sends a text to Paula later about how it was heaven. And so he winds up like shooting to the top of the charts again. He even like passes Josh. So then we have poor Greg getting ready with his bow tie, really unhappy with the whole situation. He's adjusting things with Hector, and he said, I used to feel so confident about Rebecca, and now this week I've just been steaming a whole bunch of fish and agreeing to sail over the Temecula Valley in a stripy balloon. So Hector asks, are you having second thoughts? And he says, yeah, I am, but I'm still gonna do it. And as he's having this moment, we go over to Rebecca, who has tracked down Dr. Akopian at the wine bar, and is telling her, because Dr. Akopian, when asked if doing this at all is a good idea, she says maybe it'll give Rebecca some clarity, and Rebecca is genuinely surprised that she wouldn't say that this is just generally a bad plan. I already felt where Rebecca winds up is where she would. Like, when she said this might offer some clarity, I personally was like, it's going to offer the opposite of clarity. It's going to make everything so much harder to no. But I get that she's just going to say whatever because she wants to get away from Rebecca. And that, I think, is key. They're having her give questionable advice, but putting her in, like, a setting that makes it acceptable. She wouldn't be in proper form at the time, you know? Very smart move on the writer's parts. And Rebecca goes to her again, and it's just like, I can't go on another romantic and perfect date. And Akopian says, then don't. Just follow what's in your heart. Just follow what's in my heart? What kind of therapist advice is that? I'm trying to have a glass of wine. I am not on the clock right now, okay, Rebecca? And she's like, yeah, okay, fair. Yes, I'll see you at 4 o'clock tomorrow. So she's walking out of there. And the idea of like just going on this or canceling this date had not even occurred to her. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that Greg was on the same page, it would be super unfair. But luckily, it's part of the clue, I think, that maybe they are good together. So she's walking out of there just feeling really unsatisfied with everything. And that earlier song about how love isn't a game, she starts singing a version of it about how it is a game, but she's never really liked games. And that quitting just seems like a bad plan, but I have no choice but to cancel. And all of a sudden she spots Greg, who is standing in front of his car, which will not start. His car that is literally 40 years old. What are you doing driving this thing, dude? And they decide to go together to bring in his car and cancel this date. It's interesting because they could have just gotten an Uber and done the thing, but they both don't want to do it. It's not like there were no options for them, you know? And I think that's what's important to remember. If they had wanted to salvage this, they could have. But both of them are uninterested in actually doing that. So they wind up in the garage, and he said she offers to stay with him because her date canceled on her, so she has nowhere else to be. And they talk about being hungry, that they were each going to eat with the other. So they were, neither of them have eaten yet. And we have a really ordinary moment of them deciding where to eat, talking about the places that they have gone, what he is in the mood for versus her. It's a scene that every couple, at least twice a week goes through, So he's watching her as she lays down the law about the fact that if he wants her to order the food, she'll do the ordering, but he has to decide on what he's going to have first so that he's not yelling at her while she's on the phone placing the order, because it's super annoying, and we've already talked about this. And as she's pulling it up, he's sort of looking at her in this way. Just one of those moments. And I love when he asks, do I like chilaquiles? And she has to remind him that yes, he does. What a thing, man. Owen and I go through this all the time where he will, first of all, I just have a better sense, because I'm really into food, of what on a menu is probably going to be good. So frequently Owen gets frustrated because his order isn't as good as whatever I got. And secondly, he has a bad memory. So we'll go a place a second time and he'll be about to order the same thing he got last time that he did not like. And I'll have to be like, babe, don't you remember you got that? And you said it was stringy and, whatever. And similarly, he will forget what he does like. So this little moment of asking, do I like chilaquiles? It really hit home for me, her knowing him so well that she literally knows a thing about him that he doesn't even know about himself for sure. And he's watching her and then just says, hey, you're the love of my life. You know that, right? And she just says back, well, I do now. She doesn't say it back. She just says, well, I do now. Which I thought was pretty interesting, And it was a genuinely sweet scene, considering that Greg is a character that I have just been so ambivalent on. That said, I don't know if the show is going to end with her with somebody. I'm very curious. One episode left. And I still don't really feel like I know what direction they're going to go with it. Meanwhile, back at the bar, everybody is waiting on tenterhooks for some news. And they get the update that Greg and Rebecca did not even show up for the hot air balloon ride. And what's his face, who owns the bar? I love some guy in the background yelling, oh man, I bet my rowing machine on Greg. But the guy who runs the bar, if they don't complete their date, it's a push. Nobody loses. Nobody wins. Which everybody is so upset about, but I'm like, honestly, guys, y'all should be glad, because y'all were about to be it was going to be screwed. And then we go to a scene with Nathaniel and Josh, and I was pleasantly surprised at this. So they have these couple glasses of wine, and look, this is super unimportant, but I do have to say it. I really appreciate how realistic the wine looks in this show. There are so many shows out there where they just fucking use cranberry juice, and it is really distracting to me. It shouldn't be, but it is, because it looks like cranberry juice. And this wine, I assume, is cranberry and grape juice mixed together or something. It just has much more of the look of wine, and it just makes my heart happy. And they compare notes, and they talk about how their dates went really well, couldn't have gone any better. And they both are uncertain, but satisfied enough with the way it went. And I think they each feel like they did their best. And Nathaniel says, whatever happens, good game, man. And they shake on it. And it's actually sweet. They're doing their best to not be totally shitty about it with one another. But then they do have a moment of, I do hope I win, though. Also, I hope Greg dies. Were you thinking San Andreas Fault? I was actually thinking Lightning Bolt. It's quick. It's painless. You know, I do like the guy. And yeah, it was just cute. I liked it. The two of them are gentlemen about it. Appreciate it. Maybe they can actually be friends. Who knows? I don't think so, but maybe. So, yeah, the end of the episode is him telling her that she's the love of his life. And we fade out from there. And it was just the first time that I was like, oh, maybe this show is actually going to win me over for Greg. I just never expected that to happen. Like I said, I really do think she shouldn't be with anybody. But if it's Greg, I'm not going to be as mad about it now as I was. I still don't feel great about it. The arguments I made at the beginning of the episode still stand. But, you know, nothing is perfect. And I'm still not entirely sure if this is the kind of show that would be okay with her not having a love interest by the end. I think they would be, but that is a kind of bold stance to take. The whole thing has been about romance. I could understand if they just didn't feel like they wanted to end it on that sort of note, but who knows? Oh no, Rowan says, I just want to say thank you now because the audio and video keep cutting out. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm seeing that there's only one person left in the chat. I'm wondering if other people are having problems too. But yeah, this was actually a much more satisfying episode than I expected. It's a nice way to sort of like bring everything to a culmination as well. I truly didn't know how I was going to feel about any of it because it's a weird proposition to make. This feels like something that would have happened earlier on in the show, and it's a lot more fun to watch at this point because Rebecca is in such a better place that I don't expect her to do anything ridiculous. But I just didn't know what to expect with it. Having the betting too. I'll tell you what, guys. I was really worried that there was going to be more interference from the people betting than there wound up being. I thought that people were going to try and sabotage other players, for lack of a better word. I'm glad that doesn't wind up happening. But if this weren't the penultimate episode, I could see them including that maybe. But they probably just didn't want to taint the results of the dates by doing that at this stage in the storytelling. But there is nothing like adding a bet into the equation to make the story a little bit more interesting. I've been reading a lot of P.G. Wodehouse lately, and for those of you who do not know who that is, he is an English comedy writer, humorist, I guess is the word that they use. And 80%, easily, of his stories involve people making a bet on things. And it's sort of like a cheap, easy trick, but also when it's in character for the people, it's super fun. And I thought that was a clever way to engage the rest of the cast and get them all simultaneously focused in on Rebecca's love life in a very believable but over-the-top and comedic way. I thought that was very clever. I'm sort of wondering if this was like an idea that they had for wrapping the series from the beginning, or if they came up with this at the last second, you know? I do wonder about that because it just seems so tidy to me. But yeah, I'm very eager to watch the next episode. I'm glad that it's going to be a live watch. I hope that you all will be able to join me for it. I'm going to wrap this one up, and thank you again, Megan, for commissioning this. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the coverage of this show. It's going to be a real end of an era finishing up this series. I feel like it's been 3 years of covering this. It's been at least 2.5, I think. It's wild to finally come to the end of it. It's going to be weird. I feel like I'm going to want to go back and rewatch because knowing where people end up, I think I'll have less anxiety watching it again. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank you again all so much. I hope to see you on Friday. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.